We are going through the AFC South. The Indianapolis Colts had a pretty glaring need at the edge rush position. And so they went out and they went back-to-back picks, first round and second round. They go with defensive ends. The Kwity Paye pick was one that didn't really surprise me much. And I was a fan of Deo. But were you surprised to see them double dip in the first two rounds at defensive end?
No, I mean, because that's what Chris Ballard does. I think the Kwity Paye pick was surprising in the sense that I don't think Chris Ballard expected him to be there with the 21st pick, especially with the New York Giants selecting right before the Indianapolis Colts after trading down with the Chicago Bears, and edge rusher being such an eyesore for the New York Giants, and the Giants pass up on Kwity Paye. Paye's a terrific edge rusher. He's a guy who, if you know the story, it's a great story. He's a high character guy. He's someone who has consistently improved his game. He was better in 2020 than he was in 2019, and better in 2019 than he was in 2018. He's a motivated guy. He fits the system. A little bit smallish, but that's what they like. And that's what Ballard likes with that with that four-man front, the small, quick, speedy edge rushers. That's what they got in Paye. Deo, I'm glad to see they roll of the dice with Deo, because I said all along, he was one of the most underrated defensive linemen, and this was before the injury, as he was preparing for his pro day workout. I think it was an Achilles he tore, which is basically what dropped or what forced his draft stock to drop. I always thought he was worth a top 60 pick. Ballard is rolling the dice on the fact that he'll get back to his prior playing form. Deo he's a complete player. I mean, he is a terrific athlete. He stacks well against the run. He holds the point. He can rush the passer. He can drop off the line and play in coverage. I've seen him run down ball handlers on film in pursuit from some 15 yards. He's got a high upside. It's just a matter of getting back to where he was before he sustained that injury in February.
Yeah, and with the Achilles injury there in late January, early February, did you think that he was going to end up going this high, even though he is a fantastic player?
No, I did not. I thought that he would go a little bit later because of it. I mean, who knows when he's going to be NFL ready, but we've seen this before with defensive linemen who were the kid that the Tennessee Titans took in the first round a couple of years ago, who tore his knee in combine training, and that's worked out well for them.
And then with the next pick, they went with SMU tight end Kylan Granson.
More of your smaller move tight end, an H-back type of even a fullback type guy. I like Granson a lot. He's not your traditional tight end. He's a guy who's barely 6'2". He's more of a pass catcher. You got to put him in motion first. I think he's going to be a real good target for Carson Wentz. He's a guy who makes a lot of plays down the field, catches the ball very well, agile guy who adjusts to the errant throw, makes the reception stride. Got to improve his blocking, but when you draft a guy like Kyle Granson, you're doing so for his pass catching, not for his blocking ability.
They go back to the defensive side of the ball with Florida safety Sean Davis.
Someone who had an up and down career at Florida, a guy who's a solid run defender, good against the pass, but never really consistently played at a high level. Be interesting to see how they use him. Are they going to use him as a strong safety? Are they going to use him as a free safety? He's one of these you get what you see type of players. I think he was a little bit disappointing last year, didn't live up to expectations. But someone who has some ability and could be a fourth safety on the roster.
Yeah, and then they stay, in the state of Texas here with their next pick, somebody who was for a long time kind of the punching bag for NFL draft takes. That is Sam Ellinger. How did you feel about him in the process?
Was not a big fan. I mean, I got to, let me retract that. I was not a big fan of him as a prospect. As a person, I got to meet him at the Senior Bowl. And he's a terrific person, and is someone who's easy to root for. But then, putting the tape aside, I watched him at the Senior Bowl. He showed really little to no arm strength. I mean, the last day of Senior Bowl, it was very windy. He couldn't get the ball through the wind. So he just doesn't have the physical skills. He's a high character guy. He's got it going on between the ears. There was one analyst who was on ESPN, who was a former general manager, who said during Senior Bowl practices that Ellinger was a top 100 pick. And I kind of laughed. I said, well, maybe top 100 when day 3 starts. And that's exactly where he went. I mean, he's a guy who just doesn't have the physical skills. Maybe he's the number 3 quarterback at the next level.
And then with the next pick, Charleston, West Virginia wide receiver Mike Strachan.
Big, strong guy, wins out for the contested throws. Did not play last year because Charleston, West Virginia did not have a season. but a guy that, was well-liked in the scouting community, basically graded as a 7th-round pick, went in the 7th round. I think you're looking at maybe a number 5 receiver at the next level.
Yeah, and then they ended their draft by going with Penn State offensive tackle Will Fries.
Fries was one of those guys who I thought his best football was as a sophomore. He's one of those players that when Penn State had their pro day, when everyone was running the 4.3s, he was also running about 0.2 faster than most people thought, which leads a lot of us to believe that they were actually running 35 yards at Penn State, not 40 yards. I mean, he's a tough, hardworking guy, kind of fumbles around on his feet. I think he's better up at guard. I think he's primarily a practice squad prospect.
Yeah, and they kind of went offensive skill position heavy with their UDFA signings. Do any of those guys stand out to you?
Maybe Deion Jackson, the running back from Duke, who's a guy who could make it as a 4th running back. I don't think he played as well or lived up to expectations of scouts, but he's more of a downhill between the tackles type of ball carrier that will run over defenders and carry them and pick up a lot of yardage off initial contact. Wow, blew everybody away when he ran. I think he ran the high 4.3s, low 4.4s during his pro day, which I think gives him an advantage, although he's not really a perimeter ball carrier.
All right, Tony, thank you so much for all of your draft input. And this was the Indianapolis Colts draft reaction.